David, how are you?
Good. Good.
Great. Good to see you.
And you?
Thank you for making the time. No, it's a bit of a crazy time for all of us, but I'm sure everyone joining in will get a lot of value out of today. So for those that haven't met you before, aren't familiar with you, why don't you tell us a bit about your background in general, and then we'll talk a little bit more about what's going on and any thoughts around that.
Yeah. So I'm a sports psychology consultant, which means I work with athletes on their mental game. So trying to get the best out of their preparation heading into competition, and then obviously bring their best performance on competition day or fight night, whatever it is, when it really counts. So that involves a lot of different things. A lot of it is around talking through the various distractions or pressures or stressors that are there heading into competition or around training or just in general life that can be impacting any athlete heading into just every day, and then obviously heading into competition that gets ramped up. Predominantly I've worked with MMA fighters over the years. That's where I started. I did part of my course. I had to do a placement with a team and with an individual athlete. And for the individual athlete, I wanted to work with a fighter. So I contacted John Kavanagh, who's the head coach of SBG in Dublin. And he was starting to build a team at that point. This is 2009. So he let me work with one of his fighters, which was Aisling Daly. She went on to fight in the UFC herself. And then I started working with the rest of the team from there. All the names that you would know from SBG, and then I started working with other fighters from other places, and as the years went by, and then got a bit of I guess just a bit of a reputation around that. So then other athletes from other sports came looking to see if they could do some work with me. So I worked with some football players, basketball, baseball, soccer, rugby, golf, a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously I know you because you're my coach, because I like to think I can do jiu-jitsu. You awarded me my blue belt and everything, which was a special day. So that's how our connection came about.
Mm-hmm. And you've helped me and some of our athletes as well. We had you for a workshop about a year ago. I've studied sports psychology a little bit just in my own journey as a competitor. But it was really refreshing, I think, both for me and a number of the people that you got to work with at OpenMat, just to hear what felt very much like a no-nonsense approach to sports psychology. And, those who maybe are not as familiar or maybe a little skeptical probably think it's all just positive thinking, Pollyanna stuff. And I found some of your approach just very practical and, no nonsense. So maybe we can have you talk a little bit about your general process before we think about applying it to kind of what's going on these days.
Yeah, and I would agree. Like for me, it is. It's so practical and common sense based, and there is no magic. There is no special thing that's going to make all the difference for an athlete. That's one of the things that I like to get across straight away when I'm working with someone new is, okay, you're still going to have to put the work in here. We're just going to do it better. We're going to be more efficient in how we do the work. We're going to be more honest around the things that might be impacting you. But you're still going to have to work harder than everyone else if you want to achieve the things you want to achieve, and you might still not achieve them even then. It's just about giving yourself that best chance to succeed. Because people come to me sometimes, or come to like mental coaches or sports psychs around looking for some magic fix that's going to make all the difference, whether that's like visualization or self-talk or affirmations or anything like that. And some of that stuff has a part to play, and I do some visualization stuff with fighters, but that's not going to be the thing that makes the difference. It's going to be how they work and how they prepare and how they perform when it counts. So to me, the core foundations is always around the controllables, and being aware that some things are within your control and some things are not. So for athletes, that's like, let's say a fighter heading in, the controllables are things like your training, your sleep, your diet, your circle, as in who you allow to support you and impact you with what they get to say, who you surround yourself with, basically, your timekeeping, and then on the fight night, it's your performance. All of the things that are outside of your control are who your opponent is and what they're doing and what they're saying, your fans and what they're saying, the haters and what they're saying, the referee, the judges, the promotion, the contracts, what's the actual outcome of the fight, what your coach is saying, what your teammates are doing, as in whether they're there to support you or they're not. All of these things are outside of your control. And the more you focus on those things that are outside of your control, the more stress you're going to have. And it's a negative kind of stress, because there's literally nothing you can do about those things. So to dedicate yourself to the controllables and, trust that things are going to work out if you do that. And I think that applies more than ever here when you talk about controllables and things that are outside of your control. This might be the most extreme version that I've ever, that you could ever imagine. Never mind has ever happened, where there's something so massive that's outside of everyone's control. And it's happening before us. So that stuff that athletes can apply every day in their lives applies to everyone now, more than it has ever done before. So I think that's the core foundation for everyone I've worked with, and then everything is built on top of that. Obviously, there's unique situations that everyone is dealing with. So let's say, again, a fighter is heading into a fight. I like them to tell the story of the fight before it's happened, which means, let's be honest about the things that are here for this fight, that might be on your mind and getting to you a little bit. So instead of just burying your head in the sand and pretending they're not happening, let's be honest that these things are there. Let's talk about them. Let's see them for what they are, and then we can move forward. Examples might be, so a fighter who's fighting away from home, who's worried about the crowd reaction and all that kind of stuff, or someone who's fighting at home is worried about letting everyone down, and again worried about the crowd reaction. There's an opponent who's talking a lot of trash in the build-up. They're worried about that. There's an injury heading in that they've got in camp, and they're worried that the injury is going to impact them. There's weight cut issues. There's all these things that can be at play. There's, this fight might lead to a title shot, or if I don't win this fight, I might get cut by the promotion. All that kind of stuff is there. So we like to discuss those things honestly, openly, see them for what they are, and maybe change the perspective around them a little bit, and find a more useful, more honest, more practical way of thinking about these things, so we can get back to what it is we're asking ourselves to do, which is prepare to our best and then perform to our best. And again, more than ever, this applies for everyone now. So I definitely do think there is some aspects of sports psychology that we can all apply in everyday life, but even more so now. And
Before we go on, tell us a bit about, so you're in Ireland yourself right now?
Yeah, I'm in Galway. I moved back here. I was living in Toronto for 5 years, moved back to Ireland at Christmas 2018. So I'm here a couple of years now, settled back in with my Canadian wife and my daughter. And yeah, I mean, I'm like, I've got a good setup, so I'm grateful for what I have here, but it's still a stressful time. I'm applying a lot of the stuff that I'm talking to athletes all the time. I can't be a hypocrite. I have to apply that stuff for myself as well. So and be honest that I need to as well sometimes, because everyone feels sometimes it feels down or feels stressed or anxious or worried about what's happening, or it doesn't need to be this extreme of a case. It happens all the time. I myself have to try and live by the principles and the foundations that I'm talking. But yeah, so it's we're in a kind of a rural enough kind of setup here as well. We're away from the city, which at this point is a good thing. It has some drawbacks at times, but right now there's nowhere else I'd rather be. My parents live close by, my sisters live close by, so even though we can't really interact, we can kind of find some ways to interact a little bit with them, but it's safer when there's less people around right now, and there's just space to go out in the garden and play and stuff like that, which is I'm super grateful for. But we can talk about people that are in other kind of situations where they don't have those.
Well, so I'm in Toronto, and we've there's been a lot of movement towards social isolation, everyone doing what they can on that level, and we have had our cases, but we haven't been as hard hit as places like Italy or Spain. So and those are very dire situations. Those are very intense situations. Must be very difficult to be in those places. And maybe we can get to that, if you're facing such an intense situation. But I want to talk first about, say, someone in a situation more like ours, where we're aware of the situation, we're taking action. Our community, our society has shifted drastically. We titled this Mindset in Uncertain Times, and this is a big shift from obviously our day-to-day activities and behavior. But I think I imagine what's challenging for so many people is not knowing where it's going to go, and not knowing, is this going to be another week, another month? Some people are saying 18 months, and what does that mean? And again, I recognize that some people, I'm lucky. Many of us are lucky that we know at least where our next meal is coming from, if not, what the next 6 months look like. And so, maybe later we'll talk about when you're in more desperate a situation. But for those that are just kind of disrupted by this big shift, hopefully temporary shift, and are struggling not so much with their actual situation, but how they're feeling about it, how they're processing it. Any initial suggestions or comments on things we can do to, number one, I guess, at least not make the problem worse, and then number two, how to strengthen and stabilize ourselves so that we can make the most of the opportunities we have in front of us, the time we have, make the most of this situation.
Yeah, I mean, I found myself, I guess the last few days it's a little different, but I found myself up to that point several times each day having to check, hang on, is this really happening? You know what I mean? Like it's so surreal. You watch a movie and it seems like, well, that's crazy, like that Contagion movie or a few things like that. But when you're living through it and in the middle of it, to me, I was struggling to kind of comprehend. I still am to comprehend it, but even to accept it, I was taking time to like is this actually really happening? And like I said, the last few days, it's a lot better. I think I found a routine. We'll get into routine in a little bit later, I guess. But I think the first thing people can do is, this is happening. You know what I mean? Like there can be a little bit like, I wish it wasn't happening. I wish, why does this have to happen? And kind of bargaining like that. That what if and why now and all that kind of stuff. But it is happening, so we have to accept the reality that we're living in. So that's a big thing, I think, at the start. And once you accept that this is your new reality, that can help. Now, a part of this that's a real struggle as well is, like you said, the uncertainty of how long is it going to go on for. It's going to happen. So there's so much uncertainty around health, for one, like actual like disease related health. But then there's mental health related issues as well, around the stress that it can cause to as a result of the disruption compared to what you're used to. So missing friends, missing what you love to do, jiu-jitsu, fitness, just hanging out with people, whatever it is you know that everyone loves to do. Can't do that things anymore. There's uncertainty around job security, because every economy is getting absolutely destroyed. So, and I know people that have lost their jobs, and there's a lot of uncertainty for that. There's obviously no sports on, so that impacts me big time as well. So there's stress around that. How long is this going to go for? What happens? So that's, you start to worry about, bills and money and how is it all going to look? And it's the not knowing how long it's going to go for is a big thing of it. That's maybe one of the hardest parts. And then there's a fear of the unknown itself. Trying to kind of picture how it's going to look in 6 months, in 12 months, and so on. Will things ever be like they were, or is there going to be fundamental changes now to society and stuff like that? How are things actually going to look? And if you listen back over them things, they're all outside of our control. Every one of those things that would be causing stress, and there's plenty more stuff as well. Like, I'm worried about family members and friends and stuff, hoping they're okay. Less worried about myself health-wise, disease-wise, but worried about certain people and making sure that they're okay. And because Italy and Spain are in the hopefully on the down curve, but they're in the middle, at least, of just a horrendous situation for those countries. And it's the fear of, well, and how our country is planning here in Ireland is, it's coming. We're trying to limit what happens, but we know that it's going to get worse before it gets better here. And then the same in North America coming after that. So it's that fear of what lies ahead. But I think a few things. So accepting that this is real, this is happening. That's a big thing. And not wishing for it to be different, or hoping that things were in a different situation, or why can't we just go back to the way it was? Because I remember when it started first, it was a little bit kind of, it was, people were making jokes about it and not really taking it too seriously, and then it started to shift a little bit. I remember people being worried about whether the Premier League season would finish, and whether Liverpool would be crowned champions and all that kind of stuff. Much less of that stuff now. You know what I mean? It's like it's the real problems and much more serious kind of thoughts that people are having around things like that. But yeah, so accepting the reality of this situation, and then as hard as it can be, to realize that so much of this is outside of our control. Instead of stressing over those things, let's start to take a step back and think, okay, what is in my control right now? Because those are the things I need to do proactively and actively doing, and managing these things and attending to these things. And then you know, for your own mental health and your own well-being, that's the best way to approach it. So the controllables in a situation like this are obviously different than say a fighter heading into a fight or an athlete, but it's still the same principle, it's still the same fundamental that applies. So controllables right now are still your food, your sleep, so that might be different than it was in terms of your food. Maybe you can't go to the certain place you used to go to or whatever it might be, but you can still eat well at this time. You know, like let's hope that everyone is supported financially and stuff by governments and people that have lost jobs and all that kind of stuff. It really, but for them, where you can, try to eat, try to keep your diet clean, try to eat well. It's so easy to slip into a bad diet at a time like this, where your routine is all over the shop and it's not where it used to be. And there's a comfort. It's why it's called comfort eating, because there's a comfort to it. And that food is delicious, but it's going to have some negative side effects, obviously, not just on your health physically, but mentally too. That like all the sugar and all that stuff it's not good for mood. It's not good for getting your mind kind of clear. So I would say diet is a big controllable. I would say sleep is a big controllable. Now, at a time like this, again, it's normal for your mind to start wandering off when you try to sleep at night, and it can be hard, and you start to play out scenarios in your head, or but there are a few things you can do to get better sleep, and I think that's really important at this time as well, so that your mind is clear, you're recharged, you're trying to be at your best. So that's things like getting off your phone before you go to bed, not being on social media or checking out the news and all that stuff. Maybe it's an hour before bed that you cut that stuff off, but finding time to wind down before bedtime, so you allow yourself to get into that place of rest and sleep. Maybe some, there's plenty of apps out there with like we actually sleep with a white noise in the background, and there's plenty of things like that can, like, calming, whether it's ocean sounds or whatever people can find, but those things can be really good if you need a little aid or support to help you get to sleep. I think the biggest thing is try to allow yourself to wind down, switch off, get off the phone before bedtime. Try and find an actual bedtime as well, because again, routine is gone. Some people are not having to go to work anymore, so you can find yourself just staying up an extra hour later, and then it starts to become 1 a.m., 2 a.m., and it's all over the place. So try to find a bedtime that makes sense, so you're not overtired when you're trying to get to sleep as well.
So we're getting onto some of the practicals within the controllables, and I think when we talk about mindset, the first thing that comes to mind for a lot of people is think happy thoughts, or just working on like patterns of shifting how I think. But how we think is influenced by how we feel, and how we feel is influenced greatly by those habits that form our day, form our basic need satisfaction. So sleep, food, exercise. And I think that's a really important part of the discussion, that we need to, in order to make sure that we're in a good position mentally, we have to take care of those basics. And for many of us, maybe we had a good routine that included doing this or that before work. And now, even if we're still working, but working from home, that routine's shifted. And so everything's in flux, and it's very easy. I know for myself, like I have a meal prep routine I do every week, and these last 2 weeks have been a lot different, and I've definitely felt the impact, and it's very easy to slip. But I think one thing I would say to that is, you know, there's a line in The Art of War: you can fall behind and still catch up. It's like, okay, even if your habits have been off the last few weeks, like, okay, we can change that today. And that goes back to, I can't change the past. That's an uncontrollable, but I do control. Like, I don't control what's happening in the environment with society. All I control is how I treat myself in this. And I think that's, in this situation is really underscoring, I think, a really important and undiscussed element of, I don't know if self-care is the right word, but it's like the less healthy you are, the less well slept you are, the more stressed you are, you're higher risk of getting sick, and then as a result taxing the medical system. So if you really want to do the best you can for society, like, you better take really good care of yourself. That's kind of the best way you can serve anyone. And then, you know, I know for myself, if I haven't slept well, my mood and my thoughts are certainly much less so on my own side. When I've gotten good sleep, when I've gotten exercise, and maybe you can talk to some of these practicals and how you approach them. And I think everyone's got their own kind of hacks and habits. I like the white noise idea, you know, and that things like that. Like, that's a very practical, actionable thing. And is it mindset? Well, life is mindset, right? So the things we do on the daily are going to impact how we feel and how we think. So, you know, for me, these are actually really vital things to make sure we're doing, so we can spend our energies better and be feeling better while doing it.
Yeah. I mean, it's all interconnected. There's no point in separating, like you said, people wouldn't think of food and sleep and exercise as sports psychology things, but to me, they're core foundations for the whole thing. Like, you can't separate the physical from the mental and the mental from the physical. They're all interconnected completely. So yeah,
Right.
those things are super essential to maintain. And like you said, it's a good point. Just because maybe you haven't been doing that since this whole thing has kicked off, your routine is out of whack completely, doesn't mean you can't start now. You don't need to wait till Monday, which is a traditional thing that people do. I'll start Monday. You can start clean now. It's a decision make or don't make. But yeah, just because it's been bad, you can get back on track. So yeah, food and like and sleep and exercise. I mean, you've been doing like an exercise thing that people can follow along with, and lots of people have. GSP's doing one, and there's loads of people that are online where you can follow along. My wife she just started doing yoga like a few weeks ago, or maybe a few months ago now, but so she's doing this YouTube version of yoga, following along. There's loads of options. I mean, you don't need to go to the gym to exercise. There's lots of stuff you can do, body weight stuff you can do, or there's loads of options. You don't need to have a home gym. You know, some people are fortunate enough to have that, but that's not necessary. You can do a lot of exercise with your own body. You don't need any equipment whatsoever.
Don't need a partner, don't need equipment. And
no.
So that's why we've been doing these online classes. So many people now are doing online classes. So there's tons of information and content available. What are you doing for yourself or suggesting for your clients on that physical level right now while you're at home?
Yeah, so me, I've got like a decent enough space here, so I can do some sprints and things like that. But then I'm doing like the old fashioned thing we used to do when I used to play football, we would do like bodyweight squats, push-ups, burpees, and there's a few things we do, like mountain climbers and a few different things, circuit like that. And you can wreck yourself doing certain.
Oh yeah.
So that's the kind of stuff I've been doing. And I can, I've got a basketball thing there as well, so I can just get a bit of movement in and just be active a little bit with that as well. So one thing I'm trying to do though is do it as much as possible, do it at the same time every day. Now that's not always going to be possible, and certain priorities are ahead of other things and stuff like that, but definitely trying to make time every day to do something. But then trying to find that same time every day, because you do start to form, and I've already done it now, started to form a new routine in this thing. So I've always worked from home, so it's a little easier to adjust that way. But my daughter wasn't here with me. Childcare. My wife was working in her office, so she's not here usually. So that's different as well. But yeah, getting into this new routine. Like I'm not playing football anymore. There's no football on. There's no jits on. There's no gym to go to. All the things are gone. But trying to find that new routine. So as much as I can with bedtime or with meals or with exercise time, that's starting to form a structure, because then it just helps to get some kind of a routine established, which things you find your new normal. We're pretty adaptable. People are pretty adaptable. So if you allow yourself to see the importance of those routines and how they're important, that can help you to adapt to this new situation. Because like, you don't know how long it's going to go for, but you want to make the best of it as you can. And one other impact as well, because you mentioned physically, like that's going to have an impact potentially how well you're looking after yourself. And I think another part of it is, it's not just the mood for yourself, it's that domino effect of how your mood might impact someone else's mood, because mood is contagious. And emotion is contagious. So if you are going down to the grocery store or whatever to pick up some stuff, it's a strange feeling right now. Like it's very strange how people, they have to distance themselves from each other and stuff like that. It's not a natural thing. But that can create kind of a negative emotional contagion around how we interact with each other, and if we're suspicious of each other and all that kind of stuff. So I just giving a smile to people can help, because that picks them up, and maybe that domino effect of that positive mood. But you're going to be in a better place to be able to do that stuff if you're looking after yourself in the first place. It'll be another positive impact on society in general, I guess.
Yeah, and that brings up an interesting point about how we, who we're surrounded with, how we impact them and how they impact us. And, one thing they talk about in, I guess, like mindset or success study is like, you're the product of the people you spend time with. And right now, that's, even for those that know that lesson and live by it, it can be a really challenging time, because you might be stuck at home by yourself or with people that you might love and care about, but that aren't necessarily the best for your psychology. And then conversely, you might be lucky to be around amazing people for your psychology. So there's so many dynamics there, because I think it's a good reminder that you being healthy and happy and in a good state of mind is kind of the best thing you can do for those around you. But at the same time, I know, like, for example, for some parents, there's probably a lot of pressure on them to always have a smile on their face or always be positive for the kids. And that's just an extra layer of pressure. I wonder if you'd have anything to comment on that with like balancing our own mindset. So I know for myself as a, my position, kind of being a bit of a leader in my community, I am, for better or worse, I'm relatively pretty positive in all this for various reasons, but I know that there's, for others, say instructors, and just people in general who are in leadership positions, whether it be a parent or an actual leader, there is that pressure on top of managing your own emotions to take care of others. How would you, what would you comment on around that?
Yeah, I mean, again, you can only help others, or you can only have that impact you're looking for, whether it's on, like in your case, where it's members of the team or a parent or whatever. If you are being honest with yourself first, so it's very difficult to fake. There's very few good actors out there. Even actors, there's very good actors out there. So, it's much better. It's much easier to be honest with yourself first. So, like when I say tell the story of the fight and all the things like fighting away from home, fighting at home, or whatever was what this fight might lead to. Well, we need to tell the story of this current situation for ourselves as well, because staying positive, that doesn't mean anything. So let's be honest about what is stressing us out. So like I mentioned, worried about family and friends and relatives and all that kind of stuff and their health. So is there something I can do about that? Just making sure they're properly, socially distancing, if there's anything I can get for them, that, all that kind of stuff. But that's there, that's real. And it kind of, it's going to be part of this. What else am I worried about? Job, work, money, all that stuff. That's real again. And a lot of it is a completely, even though it's outside of our control, doesn't mean you just, okay, that's gone. If you don't address it, then it's going to be just hanging around, trying to get in. But if you address it, then you can easier place it down where it goes. And there's so many other things right now. How long is this going to be going on for? What's going to happen to our country? Happen? So many things that's to worry about and stress about. Have a little time with those things. Tell the story of them. Be honest about them. See them for what they are. And then when I'm talking about your social circle and that's one of the controllables, who you let influence you, that doesn't just apply to friends and family and stuff. That applies to social media, especially at a time like this. Do you really need to know every single update? Like, you don't want to bury your head in the sand and be oblivious to what's happening. But do you need to constantly know hour by hour what's happening? Maybe not. Maybe you can, like the old days where the news was on at 9 and that was the news and you heard the news. Maybe you can hear the news at that time and that's it. You don't need to know all the time. Now there's 800 cases. Now there's 812 cases. It's not really helping you. You can find out that information when needed. So that's not going to be doing you any good, to be constantly checking that stuff. And and be aware of who your sources are, because there's so much around as well, so much misinformation. So you can shut a lot of that stuff off too. Just find real sources that you can trust, and check them at least less regularly than you maybe have been doing. Because then you're in a better position to be able to be like supportive for other people. Have to address that stuff for yourself. So with parents, I mean, it's challenging now working from home, and the kids are at home too, and it's a very unique situation. I'm expecting my daughter to start shouting for me any second now, because every call I've had since this, she's pretty much started shouting for me, because of course she does. She wants me. I'm in the house, we're around, and so she, she's only 3 years old, so she doesn't know what's happening. Her routine is all over the place as well. Let's not forget, and kids are all over the place. And depending on what age they are, some of them know what's happening to whatever level they can understand it. Some don't, but their routines, no matter what age they are, is all over the place completely compared to what it was. So we have to respect that for them as well. But as much as we can, try to look after ourselves so then we can be supportive for others. Does that make sense with telling the story of this whole thing as much as we can?
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that. Because one way I try to approach challenging situations in general, like say an uncertain situation that which could go really poorly or might end up being fine. I try to think about kind of what's the worst case scenario, so that I'm ready for it. Now, this is such an intense situation that might be the wrong approach. But at the same time, if we look at, say, it's a challenging thing to even think about, but situation like Italy or Spain where the numbers are terrible. And I mean, the reality is any of us could get hit by a car crossing the street, and we don't control that. And we might do everything we can in our society to stay, healthy and safe, and yet we might still get sick, and we don't necessarily fully control that. At the same time, for me, it's like I find benefit in not necessarily imagining the best case scenarios, but imagining, thinking about or visualizing, where do I want this to go? Where do I want, I don't control the situation, but how do I want to be in this? And okay, so there is going to be this major impact on our society, on my, for the individual, thinking about it, my individual working situation, my family, best case and worst case, thinking about both those, so the parameters within which you're working. And then thinking about, one thing for me about this situation, it's such a disruption that really anything now is possible. Like, who knows what the new normal will become, right? So for me, it's a time to, while, doing everything we can to keep ourselves and those around us safe, it's a time to also think about, in a perfect world, once things do kind of return to normal, like what have I kind of gained from this? Like, I was talking to a friend earlier about, now he's cooking every day and he's learning to cook. He has that time. So, of course we don't want anyone to suffer. We don't want anyone to get sick, but we can use this new opportunity, this new time that we have, to grow in various ways, so that when things do return to normal, we're in a much better position to take the lessons from an intense situation like this and take us forward, in a sense. How, does that resonate?
Yeah, I think one of the big things that we'll be able to take forward is that, that you can handle whatever comes at you. You know what I mean? So the situation itself is like you couldn't anticipate this. It would have been impossible to, like, even someone who works for governments on planning against pandemics would still struggle to actually, anticipate exactly what's going to happen and how the impact
Mm-hmm.
and all that kind of stuff. So, regular everyday us, you could never have expected all of the various consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said earlier, we are pretty adaptive though. And we do find our new normal, our new routine, and we're pretty robust if you trust in yourself. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a big thing that we can look to do after is to, right, okay, whatever is thrown at me, I'm going to handle it in a way that I would want to handle it, and I would be proud of myself looking back
Mm-hmm.
what I did. So that can be a big thing. And another thing, obviously, how much would you love to swap out this for the problems you had 3 months ago?
Mm-hmm.
That you thought were big problems and that
Mm-hmm.
you stress. You would trade those in a second now.
Mm-hmm.
Those were the only things that you had to worry about now. That would be awesome for most people, obviously. But that's another thing as well. Just a little perspective to keep once things settle back. That to me is a big thing to take away.
Yeah, I think a really important concept, and I don't mean to like underplay how serious this situation is, but Tony Robbins talks about um, even in a bad situation, ask yourself what's good about it. And again, we don't control it, but what we do control is how we look at it. And we can look at all the terrible things and we can focus exclusively on that. But for many of us, it's been a chance to really connect with family and friends in a new way. It's been a chance to connect with ourselves and step back from, I know for myself, the regular routine of going to the gym 2-3 times a day and then trying to write and trying to work and connect with people felt very hectic. And now, even though trying to kind of run these online classes and keep in touch with everyone has been challenging, it's on a level, and again, we haven't kind of experienced anything near what a lot of places are going through, but on a level, that's this idea of like interrupting your pattern, I think is really important because our patterns can kind of force us or keep us stuck in a certain path or direction. And now we all have the opportunity to reconfigure how we see things, reconfigure how we approach things. I take a few lessons from jiu-jitsu that I'm trying to like mentally apply to this. It's like in terms of when we start worrying about like where things are, oh no, things are not where they were 3 months ago. Well, it's like, if you're on top of someone on the mats and then all of a sudden you get thrown to the bottom or swept to the bottom, doesn't help you to think about the good old days when you were on top. Like, you're here now, like what can you do from where you are? And, oh no, I haven't been good about nutrition this week. It's very easy to beat ourselves up for those kinds of things, but our position is what it is, and all we can do is deal with this situation. Another thought that's actually been really coming up a lot lately is, what do we suggest to someone who is depressed? The best thing anyone who's depressed can do, assuming there's no biological issue at play, is go volunteer, go help others. And right now, whether it's simply like being an ear for someone on a Skype call or helping, there's this whole crew of, I forget what, caregivers that are, or people that are coming together to make sure that elderly people in their communities have food. Like, that feels good. So and it could be someone in your house, but doing good for others kind of is a boost. So another way to kind of make good of this situation, one of the things I was talking about in one of the sessions we were running last week is, you know, not to be graphic, but we take food in, something else comes out. We take water in, something else comes out. We take experiences and education and conversations in, and poetry and books and architecture comes out. We are transmuters. We can take something and make it something else. And this, you know, we'll say is a bad situation, but we can choose what to make of it. And for me, that goes back to that idea of like, we don't control the ingredients of this soup that we've been given, but we control what we make of it. And the question is, you know, of course we can't, you know, instantly change society, but we can change how we're processing things, how we're behaving in this time. And for me, you know, again, I want to be careful not to fall into the Pollyanna, oh, just have a positive mindset. But at the same time, like, what is the best case scenario here? And keep that in mind. And as you said, like, tell the story of this fight. I'm going to be disciplined over this time about my food and my sleep and my exercise. And I'm going to build a routine that's not only going to keep with me for the rest of my life and boost me for the rest of my life, but it's going to be a good example to others. And that's an example of what I mean by, like, we can find the good or make the good in anything. You know, I think on the, you know, we talked about the mental side being connected to the physical side, sleep, food, and exercise. But equally important, I think, is making sure you're connected with other people for your kind of mental, emotional health and hygiene. Almost make sure you're connecting with friends and communities if you don't necessarily have a close-knit network readily available. We're getting close to our time. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I think those who are watching live and those who will be watching later also appreciate all your insights. Any last ideas you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah, I got one thing which is important, I think, to say that maybe I haven't said. And again, it goes back, I guess, what I do is working with athletes. And every time I've done so, and every fighter that's headed into a fight, I tell them, you're going to be nervous, you're going to be scared, you're going to be full of fear, and that's okay. Don't pretend you're not going to feel that stuff, because you're lying to yourself, and you know that deep down that you are feeling that. So there's no point, because every fighter headed into every fight has had some fear, or had some nerves. And with this, it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to be nervous about what's going to happen. That's normal, part of being a human. So don't deny that stuff. Accept it as part of this. You know, that's part of the unknown, as part of the uncertainty. That's part of this whole pandemic, is the nervousness and the fear and everything that it does cause. So accept that you feel that way. Every one of us at some point with all this has been afraid. Maybe not of the actual physical impact of the disease on yourself, but maybe on family or friends or other members of the community. Maybe afraid of the economic impact, personally, in terms of your job, or in terms of, you know, the country, the world, and what's going to look like after, and the things that you used to, you know, take for granted, maybe they don't even exist, all that kind of stuff. Okay to be afraid. It's okay to be nervous about that stuff. So accept those feelings and those emotions, but then, as much as you can, try to bring it back to those things that you can control, and just staying in the present as much as you can, because a lot of those fears are fears of a potential future, but you're not there yet. You might never be there, but so try and stay in the moment as much as you can. And that's easier if you're doing all those kind of little practical things like your food, your exercise, your social media content, and being honest about all the stuff that's happening, how it's impacting you. So I think that's an important kind of point to make as well.
Mm-hmm. David, thank you so much. I really appreciate all the wisdom and your time. I'm sure everyone else does as well. I hope very much that we're all kind of through this soon, but that we take a lot of powerful lessons from it, and in that way, hopefully, we can make good from bad. So, thank you again. Thank you to everyone who was watching and will be watching in the future, and only health and stability for all of you.
Yeah, and just to say as well, for all the OpenMat people, if you have, a question that you wanted me to address specific to you or whatever, you can message me on Instagram. It's David Mullins on there. And if there's something you wanted me to maybe give some perspective on or whatever, or advice on or whatever, happy to answer those.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Cool. Good to talk to you.
You too. Good seeing you.
Okay.
Be well.
Bye-bye.